It is now my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Vice Admiral Jan Tighe, who will be discussing the United States' use of technology to enhance our military operations and combat cybersecurity attacks. Vice Admiral Tighe serves as the Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Information Warfare and as the 66th Director of Naval Intelligence. Previously, she served as the commander of the U.S. Fleet Cyber Command and the U.S. 10th Fleet, where she was the first woman to command a numbered fleet. A career cryptologist, she is a graduate of the Naval Academy and has both a doctorate and master's degree from the Naval Postgraduate School. In addition, Vice Admiral Tighe has been awarded the Distinguished Service Medal, the Defense Superior Service Medal, the Legion of Merit, and numerous other awards. Vice Admiral Tighe, your accolades, accomplishments as a member of our armed services are extensive and a true testament to your impressive career. On behalf of everyone here today, I would like to thank you for your exemplary service to our country and for joining us here today. Ladies and gentlemen, Vice Admiral Tighe.
Well, good afternoon. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and speak with you. I have been home in Broward County since Wednesday to participate in the Port Everglades Fleet Week events. So the timing of this event was very fortuitous, and congratulations on putting it together so quickly. So this type of venue where I can almost see your faces but not really is really hard for me because I don't get any body language back on whether I'm talking in gibberish or actually you're understanding me. So if you would please just exaggerate your body language a little bit for me, or, so if you're following, give me one of these, or if I'm gibberish, just something like that. That would help. I was asked to share my insights on how technology is being used to enhance our military operations and combat cybersecurity attacks. But I think it's important to first put the role of our military and specifically our Navy in perspective before jumping into the technological opportunities and the threats from cyberspace. So how do you think about your United States Navy today? We've been in extended combat on the ground against terrorists and insurgents. So how has that shaped your view of the United States Navy? What I'd like to do is offer what our narrative is to humbly submit for your consideration and how you could be thinking about us. The U.S. Navy is the cornerstone of American security and prosperity, and it has been for 241 years. It's a strategic and enduring investment that keeps America safe and influential. A strong, capable Navy defends our homeland and assures our allies and partners, deters aggression, and protects critical pathways of trade and commerce. Operating forward, the Navy defends America on the world's ocean by projecting our national power around the globe, where and when needed. Our Navy is a potent symbol of American power and delivers a clear sign of American commitment, assures friends and allies, maintains American influence in key regions, and provides unique military capabilities. Most importantly, when called upon, we fight and win our nation's wars. Because our ships and submarines and aircraft are deployed around the world, the Navy can rapidly respond and operate when called upon alone or as part of a joint or combined force to protect American interests near or far from our shores. The U.S. Navy is always close by with the warfighting ability to find and destroy targets located hundreds of miles inland. When our leaders decide to act on one of these threats, the options the Navy provides are vast and responsive: launching manned or unmanned aircraft from an aircraft carrier, firing cruise missiles and other lethal, precise sea-based strikes against enemy targets ashore, inserting teams of Navy SEALs to do what only they can do, transporting and landing U.S. Marines across the globe, just this globe, and striking enemy computer networks, and conducting a vast array of other actions around the globe on a moment's notice. All of these and more are core Navy capabilities deployed globally today and they show exactly why enemy states and potential competitors respect and fear our naval forces. We are the world's finest Navy, and we will continue to be so because we strive each and every minute to continually improve. By taking advantage of newer and smarter ways to train, prepare, and fight, our competitors are focused on taking the lead. We are focused on picking up our pace and maintaining our advantage and power. To do so, we are adapting to rapidly changing world of today. And we continue to strengthen our naval power, rapidly innovate and adapt, invest in our people and hardware, and expand and strengthen our partnerships. The Navy of today is meeting the challenges of our rapidly changing world and will continue to be the world's greatest Navy, an enduring symbol of American power. With that as your Navy narrative, who's ready to sign on? I'm looking over at it doesn't matter that you're Army ROTC or NJROTC or it could be over here. It's never too late. Be part of the team. No, seriously, leveraging new technologies is a cornerstone to maintaining our advantage over our competitor navies. And we do see maintaining maritime superiority as a serious and urgent competition. For the first time, perhaps, since the collapse of the Soviet Union, the world is becoming a more uncertain and more dangerous with each passing day. Our adversaries are simultaneously becoming more capable, and as a consequence, we are advancing our capabilities to fight and win in every maritime domain, from the seafloor to space and everything in between, including cyberspace and the electromagnetic spectrum. For maritime operations, information plays a critical role in accomplishing all missions that we undertake. We no longer execute battles with ships of the line. Instead, we operate as a distributed maritime force. And as a distributed force, the ability to communicate, to collect and share intelligence information, to share environmental information such as the weather, the sea state, the ocean floor mapping, and to be able to coordinate across the force with our joint and allied partners is an essential element of the warfight. So evolving information and communication technologies are not only improving our effectiveness in maritime operations, but they're also changing the how we will fight for and prepare for our nation's future conflicts. Ultimately, our Navy will be capable of making better, faster decisions by leveraging big data analytics, artificial intelligence, and human-machine teaming. Who's read Ender's Game in the room? Seen the movie? Ender's Game. Okay, not a lot of geeks out there. All right, so just another check. Does anybody know why yesterday was Star Wars Days? Yes. Okay, good. So not all is lost, but for those of you who don't, may the Force be with you. May the Fourth be with you. There we go. So these technologies that I'm talking about, artificial intelligence, human-machine teaming, and big data analytics, they offer much opportunity in terms of competitive advantages. But we must design them and implement them with cybersecurity in mind from the very beginning of that implementation. The good news is that your Navy is baking cybersecurity into all new designs that we are moving forward and will be part of our future fleet. And we're retrofitting systems that weren't designed that way in the past. And let's talk a little bit about why that's an imperative for us. We're currently seeing a range of threats and threat actors that are affecting not only military operations, but public and the private sector as well. The first group, which is probably the most prolific, are the criminals that are taking advantage of cyberspace. This is purely for-profit. Some of them are tied to nation-state actors, but generally we tend to look at the activity as profit-motivated criminal activity. it generates a lot of noise in the system if you're in the business of defending networks, or if you're in the business of cybersecurity. They have attributed approximately 20% of the internet traffic today is some form of malware or malware communicating back with an infrastructure that is known to be malicious in people's systems. When it comes to the United States government or the United States Navy in general, these cyber criminal, mostly autonomously operated malicious software capabilities don't know that they're knocking on the door of the United States government or the United States Navy, and they're looking for vulnerabilities that they can exploit to get your social security numbers, to obtain information about credit cards that they can sell on the black market. But they do knock on the door every day. And it's just one more of those things that we all have to be able to deal with, even if we really weren't the target of those attacks. A big piece of the criminal activity is using spear phishing, an email that comes to you that looks like it's from a legitimate source. Maybe it's something you're interested in. You click on it, and it unleashes in the background malicious software onto your computer to do whatever it is that they are trying to do. Everybody is pretty familiar with the Home Depot hack that happened in 2014. It exposed about 56 million credit cards or debit cards and affected 53 million customers' email addresses. Home Depot's own estimate of the cost of the breach to them was $62 million. That doesn't even account for the types of effects that may have happened to the victims whose information was stolen out of Home Depot. Since 2014, we're seeing another kind of criminal activity take place, and many of you have probably seen or heard of it, and it's ransomware. If you used to watch The Good Wife, it was well demonstrated on that, and I don't know if you have seen that, but there's a lot of cybersecurity things that were baked into that show. But ransomware, as I talked about, could come to you as a spear phishing email. Looks like it's coming from a colleague or potential customer, and it's targeted at our companies, commercial industries. And if you open that email and click on the attachment, what ends up happening is your computer, depends on how it's crafted, but typically your computer's information is encrypted, and it rapidly spreads through your company's network and encrypts that data. And you don't have the keys to unlock all of that information. And so, a screen pops up and tells you how much to pay and where to pay it, and they will give you the keys to unlock your own information. And so that's ransomware that's been going on for quite a while. The estimates from last year is that cost victims an estimated $1 billion. But that's really hard to estimate because a lot of the victim companies don't want to acknowledge that they were a victim of ransomware because it may make them look weak or like they have some kind of cybersecurity vulnerability. The reality in those cases is the humans interacting with the network is the weakness, and the better those emails are crafted to be targeted and look legitimate, the harder it's going to be for humans to recognize them as being potential spear phishing emails. So now the newest revolution in that ransomware attack is that because a lot of these things are automated, people have found a way to price the ransomware based on your geographic area. So the sweet spot in ransomware has been don't charge so much that people can't afford it. Don't charge so little that you're not making enough. Find the sweet spot. So now, based on where the malware is going, they use. You can't make this stuff up. They use the Economist's Big Mac index that compares how much a Big Mac costs in different countries to price how much they're going to charge for the ransomware. You really can't make this stuff up. So we're moving also now, we're starting to see beyond the ransomware where they encrypt your own data and charge you to get it back. as a company to extortion. You all probably read recently about the extortion attempt that appears to be on against Netflix, where the extortionists not from Netflix, but from one of their post-production companies, somehow obtained copies of the next season of Orange is the New Black, threatened to release it if they didn't pay the ransom. Netflix refused to pay the ransom, and it got released. I think it's episodes 2 through 10, well ahead of when Netflix was planning to release it. So FBI investigation ongoing in that one. But this extortion idea is they either obtain information off your servers and extort you to pay them so they don't release it, or it could be something sensitive about the company. It could be a wide range of things. So that's sort of the criminal side of the house. The thing that we have to be, as from a national security perspective, most concerned about is those nation-state actors that are out there, large, nation-sponsored, could be government directly, could be their military, could be state-owned enterprises. But we have to remember every day that sort of the ethical standard and the differences between the private sector and our government aren't all the same in every country. And so sometimes, you can't tell the difference between whether it's a nation-state attack or it's someone who's working for a nation-state, or if they're not working for the nation-state, or do they really have the freedom to do whatever they want anyway and could be working for the nation-state? So those are the kinds of things. Some of these attacks, most of them are very, very hard to attribute, and what we tend to do is look at patterns in what those attacks look like and attribute them to specific types of actors. But I think most of you remember, much of the activity from nation-states originally started as espionage, looking for information that would forward and help their own national security posture. Things like attacks on our defense industrial base to steal some of that cutting edge technology. They get to skip over all the research and development and the intellectual property that's there, pull that out, and they can go to production much faster and have potentially a credible capability against the United States military because they've stolen it out of our national treasure and wealth in defense industrial base. You've also seen and read about the attack in 2015 on the Office of Personnel Management, where 21.5 million records, personal records, with background investigation of current and former and prospective federal government employees, as well as other individuals who have had federal background investigations were conducted. So I just figure my fingerprints, all of everybody I put on my security form that are my associates, the address of my parents, the phone number of my parents, brothers, sisters, that kind of information is going to be out there. And there is a question, just to be really clear, there is a question that says, have you ever worked for a foreign government? So, that's something that is on that form. So all of that information about the security investigation has been lost for a whole lot of people in the United States. And it could be used in a variety of different ways, but it's a very dangerous place for people who hold a high security clearance for that kind of information to be out there. And I told you, the spear phishing types emails, the more realistic they are, the more they know about you, the more effective those spear phishing can be. We've also, as you all probably know a lot about, you saw the disruption of business operations sort of as punishment or retribution for the movie The Interview when the North Korean government went after Sony Pictures. And a lot of damage done there by extracting information and potentially releasing that damaging information from Sony Pictures, but also there was wiper malware in there. And what that means is wiper malware basically destroys information that may be on your servers. And so that's a potentially very, very dangerous capability to have and affects businesses greatly. We've also had denial of service against the financial sector. Banking, very hard to get your work done if your servers and web pages are being flooded with requests that you can't handle. Over the years, our internet service providers have gotten a lot better about being able to filter those kinds of things out. But as you well know, these days, almost every device you might want to buy, an alarm system for your house, smart TV, soundbar, temperature, thermostat control, all of those devices now are mini computers that potentially can be, on the internet. And so they also represent opportunity for people to take those over, turn them into zombies. That's a bot, using a botnet. And so your thermostat may be participating in the denial of service against Bank of America. Because all of those devices popping up, they can create an army of bots and point them at things when they choose to. So these, denial of service attacks against banking is a very, very dangerous thing. We've also seen a wide range of disruption of critical services. One of the most disturbing ones is what happened last December. It was believed to be Russian attacking the Ukrainian power grid. In Kiev in December, they knocked out power across Kiev for over an hour. They cut about 1/5 of the power, Kiev's total power consumption at that time. They did it during the night. And that was a year after a separate one that hit Western Ukraine, where they took over the circuit breakers and turned off circuit breakers, and then followed up with flooding the company with fake calls so that they were blocking legitimate users who were trying to call in and report outages. So it's a very, very dangerous world out there. We have seen one of those kinds of attacks on our own critical infrastructure, and perhaps more than we know, but it was reported last March that a dam near New York City, it was a small dam north of New York City, was infiltrated by possibly Iranian actors. And they broke in to take command and control of the dam. The good news is, when they broke in, the dam was offline, meaning it was in mechanical mode because they were doing maintenance on it. But it does show us that people are interested in getting to our critical infrastructure and potentially having an effect on those kinds of things. Cyber as part of a military campaign, we've known about for at least 9 years when we saw the Russian-Georgian conflict in 2008 include cyber attack to disrupt information services, to disrupt first responders, while the tanks were rolling into Georgia from Russia. So that's not a new thing. That's what we expect, sort of the future of warfare between nation states, to include that informationalized components. And then we have, we are seeing cyber also as part of larger information operations campaigns. Much discussion about the effect on the US elections this year by suspected Russian actors, but in the last 10 years, you can look back at reporting, and there has been sort of a dedicated information operations campaign against Ukraine, against Bulgaria, Estonia, Germany, now France, Austria, where the campaign is intended to influence elections, to sow discord within a particular country, undermine the faith in the public institutions that include government agencies, and go after both the media and elected officials. So all that sounds very familiar. That's been going on in Europe for 10 years, and there is a pattern. So the threats that are facing us have evolved well beyond cyber mischief or even spy versus spy. Recent history has made clear that the rising tide of information technology propels unpredictable world events, and data compromises and destructive cyber attacks can generally threaten our economy and our way of life in all ways. We lose our freedom of action, we lose prosperity, we have increased operational risk, and at worst, we have property damage, injury, or death resulting from these cyber threats. So it requires neither a crystal ball nor exquisite intelligence to anticipate that this trend will grow. And so what are we doing about it? No, really, that's a question. What are we doing about it? This is where we go interactive. I have no more notes. Clearly, the cost of hacking, becoming a cyber criminal or a nation-state actor, the cost of entering into hacking is the idea of finding vulnerabilities, human weaknesses, or system vulnerabilities, and finding one way into a network to achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve, profit, hacktivism, whatever that mission is that you're trying to achieve. Low cost of entry for the hackers. For the government, for companies, for people, for individual people, high cost to defend against everything that a potential hacker could do to get into your network. You got to defend against everything. They only have to find one way in. So the way we began to change the nature of this conflict is to make sure that even if they find a way in, which inevitably they will find a way in. Even if they find a way in, they can't achieve what they intended to achieve, meaning our systems are built resiliently so that even if they find a way into your house because you left a door unlocked, the alarm goes off. There are motion detectors. There's a bad-ass dog in the room that will come after you. Layers of defense and being more resilient so that they can't really achieve the ultimate goal, having the dam offline when that attack happens to come, having that manual capability to do that. So we're beginning to build our systems more resiliency, with more resiliency, and understand what are the key things in military operations, in a particular company, in government critical services that have to absolutely be protected, and hardening those things in a way that if someone gets into the main network, they can't get to that. And so that's kind of where we're headed as a nation, and that's the way the Navy is protecting itself. As we bring new technologies in, and as we forward the advancement of artificial intelligence and human-machine teaming, we're building those things with the resiliency in mind to be able to isolate, detect rapidly any anomalous activity, be able to take a punch if they get in and do something to us, but keep fighting. Our ships, for example, are designed to take missile hits, but it's not going to sink to the bottom of the ocean when you take the missile hit. We've built it better than the Titanic was built. We've learned from these things. You have ability to compartmentalize and continue to fight the mission of the ship. That's what our networks have to be able to do. That's what our critical infrastructure has to be able to do. Even if the bad guy gets in, we have an ability to keep them from achieving their goals. Then the cost for them goes much higher, because it's not, the world is your oyster once you get in. No, you have to keep fighting your way in, and the cost goes up for them, and that changes the balance of power there. So that's the plan, and I'd be happy to take more recommendations from you all if you have any. And with that, I'll be happy to take your questions.
If you have questions you'd like to ask Vice Admiral Tighe, now is the time to please hold your question cards in the air, and we'll come and pick them up. But let's go ahead and start with Lake Worth High School, who will stand and ask the first question.
Hello, Emerald. I'm Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Diana Ortiz from Lake Worth High School, AFJROTC. And my question to you today is, as an inspiration to future female military leaders, what is one piece of advice you would give us to help us succeed in our future careers?
Well, thank you for that. Let's see if I can say it. Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Ortiz. Is that right?
Yes.
I think the thing that I would commend, and it's very hard to do at such a young age, but I think clearly finding a passion, as you can tell, this cybersecurity stuff, and it started with signals intelligence and electronic warfare, morphed into cybersecurity. But it is a passion for me. I love what I do, and I have loved what I have done, since I started in the Navy. To be clear, when I chose my profession, which was cryptology at the time, they really couldn't tell me what I was going to get to do. So I got a little bit lucky in that regard. And I didn't come from a military family, so it wasn't like I was fulfilling the tradition of years and years of military service. So I wasn't sure how long I'd be in the Navy. At the point that I had a choice after I left the Naval Academy to separate and go do something else or stay in the military, for me, there was never a question except, am I still making a difference? Am I still having fun and enjoy what I do? So finding that path, you're going to be most effective, you're going to be most productive, your performance is going to be best if you can find work that is meaningful to you. And serving your nation, especially in the Navy, is a worthwhile endeavor, just the service to our country. Finding your specialty within, makes it even better.
Great question. Second question?
Hello, I am Cadet Lieutenant Colonel William Escobar from Lake Worth Air Force Junior ROTC. And my question to you today is, which of your tours had the greatest impact on you and why?
Well, that's a great question. I think, as we were discussing, finding something you love, I think the point that I knew that I was really, really hooked, and this was well before you were born, really, really hooked in the business was my tour when I flew on board the EP-3. I had been sent to Defense Language Institute to learn Russian language, and Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and I was sent to fly on the EP-3 for reconnaissance missions. Again, I learned the Russian language. Notice Saddam Hussein didn't speak Russian. All of the reconnaissance aircraft went to the Persian Gulf, and so I got qualified in my position as a special evaluator while in the Persian Gulf during Operation Desert Storm. And then I was actually flying the night that we went into Kuwait in Iraq in January, before you were born. And so I was on board the EP-3 when we were going into conflict in a major way for the first time in a very long time. And so being, a signals intelligence operator, looking for threats to our pilots and our ships from the reconnaissance aircraft, and the technologies that were involved in being able to do that, because communications technologies were evolving at that time, was just fascinating to me. So my time flying on the EP-3 as a cryptologist, was during our first major conflict in a very long time was the inspiration that kept me going.
Thank you for those questions, students. We have lots of questions for you.
Okay.
So you might want to drink of water. What skills do you look for in a cyber warrior? I should have gave you more warning.
Okay. No, that's a great question. The skills that we look for most is curiosity. We have professions in the Navy where it is critically important that you have a checklist and you follow that checklist. That is not the way the cyber fight is fought. Right? So some skill areas, just tell me what to do, and I'm going to go down my list and I'm going to do it. We have innovators among the cyber warriors that require curiosity in the exploration of, is there a bad guy in my network today? How would I know? What kind of tricks could I play to kind of lure them out, to make them exposed, to get that malware to respond or whatever it is? So, on a daily basis, the nature of cyber operations is changing, and the attackers are finding new and different ways to get in, and the defenders have to find new and different ways to find them and stop them. And so I think the most significant the most significant skill that we have to have in our cyber warriors is sort of that curiosity and that willingness to color outside the lines and think of things in new ways. The folks who want to do, you know, checklists and just tell me what to do, we have jobs for those folks too, but cyber is not going to be that way on any given day.
How would you compare U.S. capabilities to Russia and China?
I don't think I would compare them. I mean, we are all very different. I described a lot of those capabilities when we were talking about, you know, a lot of those were Russian or Chinese. Yes, I don't think I can answer that fairly in this type of environment, to be fair.
How do we partner with the private sector to combat cyber attacks and prevent them?
No, partnership with the private sector is critically important. The private sector is doing a fantastic job of thinking of new ways to do defense, because much of what we talked about, you know, the commercial sector, you know, the public sector, the private sector, and the government, we're all dealing with the same types of threats. We may have people with special purpose, you know, 0 days that they're planning on using on, you know, the United States government or the military that maybe you don't see out there in the wild. But the majority of the malware that's floating around out there, our commercial providers have an ability to see and collect, analyze, and raise all boats in terms of cyber defense, because they're out there in the computers of, you know, private people, public people, and they gather that data. And by gathering that data, you know, on the types of malwares, the new evolving malware, you know, they're able to create signatures and push those out. That's the sort of the signature base, and it's a really hard game because the malware is evolving so fast that it's hard to create signatures and push them out. So the next step in that is really using artificial intelligence to look for, you know, what does normal network traffic look like on this network? What does normal behavior by these users look like? So that when something odd happens, when someone is at a time phase when they usually do something, if they go places on the web that they don't usually go, you know, they look like legitimate users, but maybe maybe that isn't a legitimate user. Maybe someone's gotten the password or the credentials of one of our legitimate users and is using it, you know, to get a foothold in our network or to steal information or to implant destructive malware. And so using artificial intelligence to sort of normalize, you know, what normal behavior looks like and pay attention to connections to bad places that we know about or suspicious bad places out in the global network, you know, is how we're going to begin to really get after that. And every day, the commercial industries are looking for new and different ways of doing that. So we have a great partnership with them. I think on the commercial side, I said this yesterday, on the commercial side, you know, the banking industry and others actually can move a lot faster than the government has been able to in the past in bringing some of those new defensive technologies in rapidly and being able to take advantage of them. We're trying to get faster. We do have a sense of urgency, not just in cyber, but in the entire competition that we're undergoing. And so a modernization of our acquisition programs and being able to test and be confident that we're bringing this new cybersecurity capability in. And for example, it's not going to shut down the rest of the destroyer because we brought this capability in. So we're secure from cyber, but we can no longer do our mission. Using technology, using cloud-based technologies to sort of emulate those environments so we can test new capabilities is what we're looking at. So we can get faster in our evolution, you know, inside the government and inside the military. Commercial industries have a very good ability to go faster.
What advice do you have for us personally in your personal life and protecting your information? Should we have personal servers?
I would say, you know, just to start with, I have identity protection. You know, there's LifeLock, there's, I think I have Identity Force. There's lots of things out there. So if you are worried about identity theft, especially if you're in a high, if you're CEO or someone in high visibility, or you have a lot of money that people would like to steal, either one of those options, you may want to use one of those identity monitoring services. They use the same kind of thing I was talking about, big data analytics. They understand how you behave and where you have your money, and when somebody tries to open a new bank account or take out a loan in your name, they're going to alert you. And so that's always a comforting thing. I've never gotten an alert since I've had it, but it's worth it, totally worth it. So that's sort of the overarching. The next thing down is, as you buy, computers, individual computers, the cloud-based technologies that are out there now, the cloud companies, the Amazon Web Services, the Microsoft Azures, IBM, Google is getting into it. They have a phenomenal ability to keep their hardware as fresh as possible, to keep their cybersecurity capabilities as fresh as possible, to eliminate vulnerabilities, because they're doing it at scale. And so, keeping your data in the cloud is actually a much safer thing than keeping it in your home computers. In your home computers, buy the antivirus protections. Definitely buy them. Turn on the automatic updates. Keep them up to date. When you interact with your bank or your insurance company and they say, set your password, okay, make your passwords really hard, because all the information about you and your kids and your dog and what street you live on and what street you used to live on, that's all out there. Bad guys, if they wanted bad enough to figure those answers out, they could figure them out. So, I'm sorry, on the password part, if you're using something near and dear to you, not a good idea. Use a long password and make it hard. When they ask you the security questions, though, I think that will allow you to reset your password. I think you have to think long and hard about whether that information's already out there and available. They're getting better at asking questions that wouldn't be something that people could find out. But another alternative is make up answers that aren't actually true to your questions. Keep those answers. Don't lose them. Write them down. So then nobody could figure out those answers because they're not actually based on fact for you. So that's another method of doing it. But I think moving to the cloud, and keeping your documents in the cloud is a very good feature. And having copies of your documents at home, maybe offline on a hard drive, is also a good feature.
One of the goals of the president is to increase defense spending. I'm going to ask this question nice and slow so you can take a drink. What's on your wish list for defense spending increases?
Sure. What we have been dealing with for several years is a strong demand signal from around the globe to have that forward Navy presence that I talked about. And with the ships and aircraft and submarine that we have today, we always answer that call. But there's a downside to going above and beyond what our ships and aircraft and submarine are capable of. And that is, we haven't had necessarily the time for the maintenance of the ships that are supposed to last 50 years, for the flying hours of the aircraft that need to be doing training. So what we call readiness, meaning you get your ship repairs done, you get the flying hours to train all your pilots to the standard they need to be before you send them out. There's a lot of other things in readiness that affect cyber and that resiliency thing. So we have a plan for getting increasingly more resilient in all of our systems and all of our networks. And so inside of our wish list, is that the main thrust of the Secretary of Defense and of the Chief of Naval Operation is improving that readiness so that our ships and aircraft can always be ready. And within that tranche of readiness, we have a cyber resiliency readiness that the modernization of some of our systems actually eliminates vulnerabilities, makes us more resilient, and that's what we're very focused on, is that readiness piece right now.
We have several questions asking about your role as a woman in coming up in the Navy. One, who empowered you to go to the Naval Academy at a time when women weren't as often going? And how did you handle adversity on the way up?
Well, I would say, the first class of women had just graduated when I entered the United States Naval Academy. I attended a summer seminar the year before my senior year in high school at the Naval Academy, and and I went and learned about the kind of educational opportunities that there are, the kind of, it's the types of programs that they have, and then what happens after you graduate. But at that point at 18, you're thinking about college, not the rest of your life, right? So, so during that time, some of the midshipmen that were there at the time, that were sort of walking us around the Naval Academy, would talk to us about things, and they said, as a woman, you really don't want to come here. Go to University of Florida, like you were thinking as a plan B. This isn't really a place for nice women. And I thought, we'll see about that. So that was kind of all she wrote. I applied to the Naval Academy. I didn't finish my applications for West Point or any other service academies. I was really kind of just stuck on Navy. I think the most adversity that existed in my career happened in those 4 years at the Naval Academy. I live in Annapolis again, on the Naval Academy. I was really afraid some of those nightmares would start up again. It didn't happen, so that's the good news. But during those 4 years, it was pretty tumultuous times in terms of the integration of women into the academy, and that was despite a lot of people thinking and trying to figure out what the best way to do that was. But our numbers were small, and there was a lot of folks, especially older folks, that just didn't see it as the right thing to do. So that was the toughest time, I think, in my career. Adversity, after I commissioned, I felt completely supported. As a naval officer, certainly there were still combat restrictions during those times, right after graduation. There were ships that I couldn't serve on. My colleagues were actually the EP3 story that I told you before. 2 of my classmates from the academy went directly to language school and to and off to the EP3s, and that wasn't a platform that was open to me. So I went later as a lieutenant because there was combat restrictions. Women weren't serving on reconnaissance aircraft, or any kind of combatants. So in those early first 10 years, there was not adversity that was personal or malicious directed at me. There was restrictions that were based on law. And then once those opened up, it's a matter of, performance, not your gender. And that's the way I felt. That doesn't mean that everyone in the Navy who came through like I did felt the same way or were treated the same way, but that's, I think adversity was not gender-oriented. Adversity was understanding, your values, having hard decisions to make, and a lot of times those hardest decisions aren't the decision between right and wrong. Those are the easy things to figure out. It's right and right. Which one's more right in this situation? It's your personal values and what you think is going to be best for the mission as a commander, or even back then as a division officer. So.
Vice Admiral, it has been such a pleasure to have you here. Such a treat for all of us. So thank you very much. We have a little gift on behalf of the Forum Club to remember us by. I promise it doesn't break any rules.
Yeah.
It's just something nice to drink your coffee out of.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time and for bringing the students, because that's a critical piece, and I hope it wasn't all gibberish or overly frightening.
Thank you all for coming. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you on the 19th.